Welcome to this week's episode of On Record PR. I'm Jennifer Simpson Carr, Vice President of Strategic Development at Fury Arubel Communications. And today I am joined by one of our newest international faculty members, Mark Beese. Hi, Mark.
Hi, Jennifer.
How are you this morning?
Terrific. How are you?
Good. We are so thrilled that you're joining us today. We are recording this episode for release on Monday, August 25th. And we are just coming off of two exciting announcements, you and Deb Ruffins joining our faculty. To provide some context for our listeners, you have 35 years of experience in professional services management. I saw your face. I know sometimes numbers make it seem so much longer than it feels, but 17 of those years were advising law firms, legal departments, law schools, legal networks on what it takes to develop strong leadership within legal organizations. And I'm sure over the 35 years, you've seen a huge shift. Um, so before launching your consulting practice, you served as a CMO at a couple of am law firms, which I think, and for those of us who have worked in-house, always makes for really good war stories, but offers firsthand experience for you to share with us the challenges and opportunities you see for lawyers and law firms. So today we're going to chat about something you're very passionate about. I think our team is passionate about the need for partner development and what's interesting at this moment in our environment. So if that sounds great, I guess let's just dive in. What have you seen change over your time in the industry? And what's particularly interesting at this moment in time in the environment that we're working in, kind of the state of the industry?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I'm grateful you didn't ask me to share war stories. So I'm breathing easier now. It's really an interesting time for law firm leaders, and at this point, because of your question, I'm focusing on partners and law firm leadership. I mean, there's just a lot of moving parts that require intentional leadership to keep a firm together, not to mention keeping it strategically focused and moving forward. And we talk about these times as VUCA times, VUCA being short for volatile, uncertainty, complex, and ambiguous. And there's a lot of moving parts. Uh, One of the big concerns for law firm leaders is engagement and retention of associates. And that's really tied to this cross-generation leadership issue. And I remember 15 years ago was the first time I was asked to talk about generational issues in a workplace. And I had prepared a little keynote, and it was going to be for a large group of partners and associates in Washington, D.C. And when I got there, the managing partner met with me and he said, change of plans. You're going to meet with the partners first, and then you're going to meet with the associates, and you're going to tell them what to do to be better associates. And I realized it was an intervention, not a keynote, not a workshop. And I said, oh, this is going to be interesting. And I thought, okay, we're going to go through a period of time. We're all going to come to some new normal. But really, that issue of generational expectations being different today is still a huge thing for firms, and it shows up in how people, how younger professionals who are now our younger partners, how they view work, their values around work, about where they want to work, about their concepts of work-life balance, of how they're going to communicate with other people. What they expect from their leaders is dramatically different than years past, how they want feedback and how often they want feedback. So engaging and retaining talent across the board is a huge challenge for law firms right now. Um, Another one that comes up frequently is technology is changing how we work. And I know you just had a couple of sessions on AI, and I just left a PD roundtable. My partner in London and I co-facilitate a roundtable of about 20 or 30 leaders of professional development in mostly AmLaw and large firms in America and Europe. And the whole discussion today is how do we use AI well? How do we use it carefully? How do we prevent bad things from happening? And honestly, those issues require vision and require structure, and they require flexibility, and they require intentional leadership by firms. And I know, and this came up in your podcast, there are a lot of people using AI
Hmm.
in ways that they shouldn't, and it's getting them into trouble. And also, there are a lot of people using AI, and it's saving them a ton of time and making some tasks like summarizing feedback or evaluation reports and associates more effective and more time consuming, or being able to get an overview or summaries or draft basic reports. So we're seeing technology being a changing factor. Client expectations are continuing to change. Um, you know, 20 years ago, Association of Corporate Counsel came out with their expectations of outside counsel. They started that conversation of changing in value. If you remember that, the value challenge. And now one of the things that we're seeing with clients is what we're calling the disaggregation of services. And so before I worked in law firms, I worked in architecture and engineering. And in that built environment, you'd have a general contractor, right? And you'd hire a general contractor, and that general contractor would then hire all these subs to do the plumbing and the electricity and the drywall. Well, for decades, for generations, law firms have been that general contractor, right? They would either have those services like how they handle the technology, or gathering information, or depositions. Now clients are saying, you know what? Turns out we might be able to do this cheaper and better if we brought some of that in-house, or we hired out ourselves. And now we're starting to see more of the clients becoming that general contractor, and law firms not only losing valuable and profitable elements, but also control over that process. And it's happened a little bit by a little bit of time. And so that whole nature of what a law firm does to provide to clients is changing. Certainly, the definition of value is changing. How clients expect services and communication to come from law firms are changing. Again, another issue that really requires intentional leadership to navigate. Those are some, not to mention the ongoing changing competitive landscape where we have non-traditional law firms providing legal services. And we thought, well, maybe that might go away or it'll stable. It hasn't. It has just evolved.
Hmm.
And now technology has made that a lot more feasible for virtual law firms and virtual specialty law firms. I find that fascinating. But again, requires intentional leadership to be able to come up with answers to get, not just respond to, but get ahead of that. So lots of things that are moving.
It's such a different environment. And you mentioned this, it happens in small increments. But if we look back, I mean, my last stint in-house was 6 years ago. I couldn't describe the market then as a VUCA environment. The expectations of younger generations was not the same as they are 6 years later. Technology, certainly, we've only been dealing with generative AI in law firms um, for the last couple of years, maybe 18 to 24 months. So it has been a huge shift. And so let's talk about that leadership piece. I think there's a misconception, and correct me if you think I'm wrong, but in the legal industry and in law firms in particular, that once you make partner, you have all the tools and the skills that you need to lead successfully. And we often hear Gina, our general counsel, say, we weren't taught leadership in business, civil law, and law school. We were taught how to be good lawyers, how to be great lawyers. So the truth is that most partners really have never had formal training in leadership, and especially when it comes to change management, right? Dealing with all of these things that you have outlined in terms of the environment we're facing. So why do you think it's such a big gap in leadership skills and management in the legal industry once attorneys are in a position where they are expected to lead? And kind of part two of that is, what are the consequences when law firms don't address that leadership gap?
Um, so why and consequences? Well, there are a lot of effects of having a business model based on the hourly rate. And this may be one of those, right? So if you compare professional services and legal with professional services and accounting or advisory, you see one of the main elements of the big four accounting firms or other advisory firms as a career ladder that has progressive leadership development skills throughout that career. And and you would be expected to go to some offsite academy for 2 days, 4 days, 5 days, or be part of a leadership cohort over a number of months or a year. So you're learning critical skills like how to give feedback, team dynamics, inclusive leadership, how to delegate, how to improve accountability, all these things that help teams work well together. And asking a law firm partner to spend 5 or 8 days out of the office uh, is a real challenge. Now, Harvard has had a great program for years. It's a leadership program for largely law firm leaders. And if you look at their curriculum, they have about 2 out of their 5 days dedicated to leadership skills, and the rest are about finance or strategy or money management or different types of what I would call management issues. And they're important, but it's still not a lot of those leadership skills that are practical on a day-to-day basis. So we don't have a culture in law firms much like accounting firms do in terms of integrating leadership development into that um, journey. Now that's changing. We are seeing more leadership development in mid-level and senior level associates, new partner academies. And I think that's great. I think part of that is just demand driven. Associates are saying, look, if you're going to expect me to run a team of 5 people or 10 people for this case, you better tell me how to delegate or how to
Mhm.
manage my time differently. Um, and so I'm very hopeful about that. So what are the consequences? Well, I think we've seen the consequences, and a lot of that gets back to those words engagement and retention. Um, people say that people when they quit, they don't quit a firm, they quit a boss.
Mhm.
And I think that's true for a lot of people. It's like, hey, I'm not getting what I want, and it's not usually it's not money. Usually it's I'm not getting feedback. I'm not getting direction. Doesn't feel like anybody cares about me. Things. Those are leadership questions,
Mhm.
and I think that's one of the main things. The other is you talked about change and change management, and maybe we can talk a little bit more about that. But um, generally lawyers are conservers when it comes to change. They are more risk adverse. They are not fast to change. But our world sometimes changes quickly, right?
Mhm.
What was executive orders on your bingo list for 2025? Was dealing with an executive order as a law firm leader on your radar? Probably not. But here we are, we have firms who are targets of executive orders and firms that are afraid of being targeted. And now we have a whole new world. And firms have to deal with that. So we have to respond to change quicker and better and more strategically and tied to our values. And that again requires some intentional leadership. So
So, how would you recommend law firms approach partner level development programs to help bridge the gap or build a bridge
yeah.
from that traditional law firm model to kind of meet the needs, the tools, the skill set of partners who are expected to lead today?
What a lot of firms are doing, both mid-size and large firms, are they're coming up with um, uh, you know, a core curriculum, a baseline of what we expect in terms of performance, a skills inventory, and a roadmap for professional development as a lawyer or a business person. And I think we'll see more of that in the leadership realm going forward. That's something certainly law firms have asked me to help with, help us build a framework for leadership development so we can match training and leadership experiences where people are at from first years, mid-level, senior level, partners, practice group leaders, senior firm management, and staff, C-level, D-level type of thing. And what were some of their leadership challenges at each of those benchmarks? And then how do we best support them in where they're at? Do you need to be teaching vision and strategy to a fifth-year associate? Probably not. But I really would like to have practice group leaders and firm leaders have a clear understanding about how to articulate one's vision, engage people in that vision, negotiate that vision, and achieve that vision. So you find those elements along that pathway, and I some firms, few firms, have developed their own leadership academies, much like we've seen in advisory firms. And I think we'll see more of that in the future. And I think we'll see more leadership competency models that will drive development going forward.
So, we're going to shift in our next episode from the state of things and the partner perspective to law firm leaders of tomorrow. So, I want to thank our listeners for tuning in today. And I encourage them to subscribe to the show, share it with a colleague, leave a review on iTunes. All of those things help support a show that brings you, our listeners, insights from today. And we always welcome your feedback and ideas at podcast@onrecordpr.com. Please join us next week. Mark and I are going to record an episode on leadership development for the next generation of attorneys. And Mark, thank you so much for sharing your insights today.
Thank you.
This episode is brought to you by Furia Rubel Communications, a public relations and marketing agency serving law firms and businesses worldwide. With an expert team positioned throughout the U.S. and supported by an international faculty, Furia Rubel enhances our clients' brands through integrated communications by providing expert guidance in crisis management and high-profile litigation, protecting brand and reputation, and supporting internal marketing teams. To learn more, visit furiarubel.com. On Record PR is produced by Jennifer Simpson-Carr and Matt Henderson, with support from the team at Furia Rubel Communications. This episode is edited by Isabel Horan and Christian Yamula. Visit www.onrecordpr.com for resources and more information.